Hello everyone and welcome. In this recording I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming new moon that we have in the sign of Virgo on the 27th of August 2022. Now this new moon is quite special because it holds quite an exact square with Mars. So this can mean a lot of things, both astrologically in a classic sense, but also in a much higher sense, and at the same time, even outside of astrology, a new moon is in Virgo is a perfect energy, perfect vibration, perfect frequency, a perfect time of the year, Virgo season, the sun in Virgo, to release, to detox, to get to the bottom of things, to find solutions, anything that has to do with our own physical bodies, our health, our diet, our food, and also, any kind of mercurially solvable problems that we might have in our lives. But if we look at it from a higher perspective, this does speak to us volumes. And of course, I would like to use one of my favorite tools to invite all of you to interpret this energy together, because this 4 degrees of the sign of Virgo is somewhere in your chart in one area of life, and also this 4 degrees of Mars in Gemini. So 4 degrees of Gemini. And let's look at the Sabian symbols. First, we'll look at the new moon because the sun and moon are together in conjunction. And what this says is a man dreaming of fairies. This is the Sabian symbol. And how wonderful, how magical, how elevated, how very Virgo-like. Because Virgo and even fairies, the sign of Virgo, and anything that has to do with spirits and spirituality of plants and the living earth is very, very Virgo-like, even alchemically. So fairies, I would say, would rather belong to the sign of Virgo than into the sign of Taurus. Even though, of course, this is highly debatable and questionable and subjective, but the Sabian symbol does confirm this. But anyway, what does this say? When we dream of something, when we bring an element of deep fantasy and aspiration to something, mercurial, something which should not be susceptible normally to this. But when we have this courage, Mars, to bring a touch of fantasy, a touch of fairies' faith, a touch of magic, a touch of personal playfulness, anything that is symbolic to fairies. And I'm so sorry to break the bubble, but not in the modern culture. Not now. As in the fairy tales, and not what fairies have transformed in this day and age, because that is deeply abominable. Fairies should be innocent and untouchable, intangible by nature. So not subject of sexual themes and stuff like that. So totally not that kind of fairy. I have to specify this. So the fairy which is more like a being of pure magic and never to be dirtied in any way, shape and form, not even by fantasy. So I'm so sorry to break some people's bubbles, but no, not that kind of fairies. But that which is Virgo, the purity of it, the mysterious, unexplainable ultimately, that which is deeply outside of Mercury's influence. So that kind of fairies. And when we bring that to exactly Mercury, something beautiful, something beyond the limits is born. Not ideal, not perfectionist, because Mercurial and Virgo-like perfectionism defeats this new moon. This is where if you add a touch of aspiration, fantasy, dream to a fairy, well, you have to also go with the flow. You can't be totally in control. And this is the square with Mars, because not being in control aggravates Mars. Mars doesn't like it. And in Gemini, Mars in Gemini always uses two tools, always has plan A and B, always has two takes on things, always has a lighter and a darker approach. And with Mars being mentioned, let's take a look at Mars's Sabian symbol in Gemini. So 4 or 5 degrees of Gemini, a radical magazine. That's so Gemini, magazine, sharing, communicating, but also magazine. What is magazine? Your mindset. How do you inspire yourself, even if from divine origins? That can also have a radical side to it, to accomplish your goals. What you say, what you do, what you communicate. That's also Mars in Gemini. The other. How is it that you use your relationships, your partners, how you include them in these Virgo kind of new creation or new beginning, new moon kind of plans, or how you exclude them, discriminate them, perhaps for their own good. Now, if someone, for example, someone would like to start a radical detox or a kind of diet which their parents, their mom, their dad, their bigger brother, sister would say, no, this is kind of dangerous, and especially mom. Oh, my child, you have to eat. Well, the parents will be discriminated from this, as in, chances are Gemini either lie, Mars in Gemini, transmute reality, or simply omit, not their business really, because you're doing it for yourself, for your spirit, or Gemini, you know what you're doing even if you don't know what you're doing. So discrimination is very much a Virgo, but this can be in the best, as I said, my example, the best, or when you are doing something deeply spiritual or maybe even ritualistic, well, chances are you're not gonna tell someone who is totally outside of spirituality or even deeply atheist, let's say, but a dear friend, colleague, whatever to you, what you're doing. Virgo-like discrimination. So this is where Mars has to decide. Because radical, that means you need to reach those fairies. Because both these themes, both these expressions, Sabian symbols do speak of radicalism. Fairies. As in a man dreaming of fairies, what does that mean? Planning, Mercury, Virgo, planning, making plans. Okay, those fairies will be integrated in that man's actions, Mars. He may be a writer, poet, nurse, anything Virgo-ish, manager, HR, gardener, I don't know, but fairies will be part of his, future plans, so to speak, because he dreams of them for a reason, or maybe fairies dream of him, so to speak. So that those fairies need to be integrated. Mars Radical magazine. So Mars is searching for the radical way. How Mars wants to integrate, so Mars needs to reach those fairies. But this is a square. If it's it's a square. It's a big challenge, because both of these energies, the extreme of them is not possible, not accomplishable, absurd. Gemini can be very absurd, because Gemini can go into polarities in an absurd way. So you must keep a balance, you must keep a certain kind of discipline where you play with the elements. You play with both the fantasy and the radicalism, but also the realism. Also, Radical magazine, you want to ignore society standards, rules, how society does it, society's, I don't know, means, terms and conditions. You want this, we want this. Mars and Gemini. Needless to say, this will show up on the world stage as a mediatic battle about perhaps something in healthcare, health, research, laboratories, anything Virgo-like, it will show up on the world stage big time. News, scandals, fights. I don't know. Things like that. But in our personal lives, this can be something, any area of life. Even that which is, 12th house area. So still, something happens. A radical action, a radical choice. Radical, I don't know, perhaps contract to be signed. And when I say contract, yes, maybe for very few people it will be a contract. Buying something, purchase, or I don't know. But for other people to be understood, contract to yourself. What are you setting yourself to do? Which road do you, which GPS route do you follow? And the other conversation which this new moon has, which I find kind of relevant, is a quincunx, but this is not exact, in conjunction with Jupiter in the sign of Aries. But if we look at Jupiter's Sabian symbol in Aries, so 7-8 degrees of Aries, this is what I find so interesting. This speaks about a large hat flying in the wind facing east. So the east wind is carrying the hat. A lady's hat with strings and decorations on it. Now, this speaks about that you really need to go with the flow. This speaks about that, okay, fairy, we get it, and also the radical. Yes, your realization or whatever new beginning this is in your life, it's gonna be a touch very different than you were ever used to, accustomed to. Or, this can be met heaven. So maybe you'll do something unusual in the world. But you will have to apply every grain of wisdom, life experience, diligence, and going with the flow that you ever learned in this incarnation and perhaps in past ones as well. Because if you do this right, if you pull this off in a balanced way, because balance is something that really, really complements any mutable sign. Gemini and Virgo, both mutable. Balance, Virgo, means that Virgo has a grip on things. That Virgo doesn't drive herself insane with the details, nitty gritty. That's when, how, but, that inconvenience, this inconvenience, how can it be perfect? No. Fairy cannot be perfect. So, this is already eliminated. This is something you must not do, and you know you must not do. Then there is Mars the Gemini. Both sides of the coin. One cannot serve two masters. One cannot risk and be sure at the same time. One has to choose. And this is where, when you choose risk, what kind of risk is it? Where are the benefits, and weigh it? Libra, very much But why Libra? Because the ruling planet of this new moon, ruling planet of both Geminis, so Mars. Mars is influenced by this energy greatly. Then Virgo, and it is in Virgo where Mercury is in exaltation. Libra. Mercury is at 1 degrees. Oh, I didn't look up the Sabian symbol for that. Maybe next time. But Mercury in Libra. Decisions, choices, what is truly Libra's ruler? Venus. The heart needs to be there because Venus is in Virgo. So this decision, as I said, is not just, I know, mental discipline, I know, I figured it out. No. This is not as simple as that. For the big things, radical, because you're beginning something big in your life. But you need to, as I said, put in every grain of life experience, especially the wisdom of the heart. That which you know in your heart, and Venus is opposing Saturn. So it's not easy for the heart. Big choices, big decisions, reality checks. But what does Jupiter promise you? Promise Jupiter. How Jupiterian of me to say that. because it promises you that it can be easy. It promises you that, the hat is going in the wind. It, if you look at it one way, it's so uncertain. If you look at it from a very wise person's perspective, it's flying. It's the divine, the wind element, whatever is playing with it. It's a miracle. You see the fairy element here. If you ignore the radical perception of society of what are you doing, how can you live like this, do you really think that you're gonna pull it off? You know what, you're gonna pull it off if you ignore that, because it will carry you. Would you ever look in fear's eyes while your hat is in the wind? Then you fall immediately. So this is this new moon. Know what you're doing and trust. If you chose to trust. Gemini, no going between polarities. You chose something, you stick with it. Mars, not radically though. Not radically. The purpose is clear, but how you get to it, yes, you have a good exception of what you're doing and it's working. Would anything suggest for you to change direction, reroute GPS, pause a little? Mars in Gemini retrograde. I don't have material yet, but I promise I'll work on it. Go with the flow. When you pause, you pause. When you not radical. When faith and faith, your faith is basically the boat that carries you on the great ocean that is fate. Well, you're sailing and the winds, and so you need to know the wind. You need to know the wind, and the mind knows the customs of the wind, but it is only the heart that knows the wind, can speak with the wind, if you know what I mean. So yes, this is where Mercury in the sign of Libra also invites us to sometimes detach, because Libra is the only inanimate sign. It is maat. And this also appeals to our own sense of what is worth of sacrifice for us personally on a deep soul level. Because as I said, with Libra, the heart has to be as light, at least as a feather. And that means that you need to give the heart what it needs. Sometimes the heart needs a last goodbye or a last confirmation, an act of last big humanity, a gesture of big humanity, to convince itself that a person, a situation, a job, a career, an old love, whatever, a fantasy, an ideal, is simply not worth it. But if it needs this for the 101st time, then you give it the 101st time. What the heart needs is the heart needs. Cord cutting, moving on, beginning anew sometimes, or accepting that you already began anew a year ago. Needs situations like this where you kind of wake up to the fact that your heart still needs a final something. And even if you cannot let go, that is also a truth that Venus opposing Saturn, is a wisdom. You work with that. You build around that. You know something. You did not radical Mars, close all doors, and then in the midst of Mars retrograde want to return because you're full of regret. This is where we need to listen to the heart, because only then will we fly, and only then will we know the right choices, sometimes per moment. Only then will we truly weave these fairies into that new beginning of ours that we are doing. But let's also look at the big picture. The big picture is Mercury in the sign of Libra. What does it tell us? It tells us that when we better our lives significantly, because Virgo is how our lives are physically, the small picture, let's say. How clean is your house? How clean is your soul? How clean is your body? How clean is your blood? Virgo Pisces axis. Everything bodily will ultimately speak about the soul as well. What do you eat? Who are your closest friends? Why do you dye your hair the way you do? Your facial expressions, the nails, that's Virgo. The small things in life, but they speak volumes about the bigger things. A friend to me said a couple of days ago, if you want to know the person, look at their smaller gesture towards you, and that's how the big gesture is going to be like. How truthful he was. That's Virgo. That's very much Virgo. And Virgo is a sign which can keep purity in standards that other signs would need to, take example of. That's very, very specific to Virgo. So where I'm going with this, if you get the small things right, the big thing is going to be bigger and a writer. Virgo, just like every earth energy, earth sign, the foundations need to be good for the seed to grow. The soil needs to be fertile. It's also Mercury, because if you know that a plant prospers in acid soil, or excuse me, I'm such a big amateur in gardening, but you get what I want to suggest. In what type of soil? Well, of course, you provide that. Would it be impossible for you to provide? Then why it's not doing its 100%. But a new beginning to solve solutions with Virgo energy. So yes, get the details right. And then also Mars in Gemini. Be the optimistic observer, but also look at all the small needs, all the small things that are not right. Be optimistic, but if you see something that is not right, correct it there and then. And also, a big new beginning and a big change that you can accomplish in your life with this square. But, as I said, invest every piece of life experience, heart, mind, every part of your body, and don't get Mars's in Gemini's expression wrong. Because Mars in Gemini sometimes can mean both ends, both sides, double agent. A little bit from this end, a little bit from that, and I'll use it as like a good alchemist. This might not be supported right now because of Virgo's purity. Neither radicalism, don't get me wrong, but you need to know where you stand. With heart, with mind, with principles, you need to know yourself, and as I said, where you stand. Radical magazine. Yes, but you need to know the self in order to see what you're discovering related to the self in the Radical magazine. As I said, you need to know your bounds, you need to know your balances, and nothing is supported. Neither choosing one radical side and sticking to it no matter what, but neither not choosing anything and being a double agent. So this is why the balance is delicate here. And this is not a very easy period. As I said, Venus opposing Saturn. It's heavy on the heart, for the heart. It really, really is. And this heaviness can come from society, other people, whatever is going on out there. Social norms collapsing, or social norms getting very, very tough. Or Venus opposing Saturn. Who are other people in your life? Let their gestures speak on their behalf. And chances are, maybe they're not gonna say pretty things about them. So a tough reality check, but one which is a path to wisdom. So let the pain be optional. Let the pain of it, the restriction of it, the Saturn be optional. Of course, from these two planets, Venus is the weaker one, but then again, Saturn speaks in tension with Uranus square, with Uranus in Taurus. And Taurus's ruling planet is Venus. So there is already a Venusian energy that Uranus has to embody, like it or not, which is dichotomy in itself. Yes, absolutely. But, and of course Venus speaks in tension with Uranus. And that means that even though Saturn may overpower Venus, Venus gets back to Saturn through Uranus. So this is a T-square, okay? Yes. But it's one of revelation, it's one of truth, it's one you must do what you need to do. And it may be radical, a radical realization in your heart. Again, for some people, that you still need a convincing to do it, to follow your path, to leave people behind, or the opposite. But you still need to be convinced by heart, and this is the moment. Your heart will get what it needs. And also, Venus square Saturn. We might need to, Venus's currency also, cutbacks, minimalism. Let's not waste, be wasteful. This is where we need to look at our investments, we need to look at our income, our future possibilities. But this is where we need to, again, going back to Libra energy, Venus in Leo. What the heart wants, passion-based, Saturn in Aquarius. What is actually possible, or how is this possible? And sometimes that how might be radical. For example, let me give you my example. For me to feel actually happy in my life right now, I would be needing to live in a countryside. Impossible. So I need to make the better of it. So you see, this is where we, all of us, need to work the way we can. So this new moon can give us solutions, but these solutions might be radical. So our schemes might be radical as well. And yet faith is everything. Jupiter quincunx. And there is a sextile between Mars and Jupiter growing. So again, this complex chemical energy translates to the fact that faith is everything. And divine guidance is, again, everything. And let's not forget that this Mercury will oppose Libra. Mercury in Libra will oppose Jupiter at one point, and not that far in the future, so soon. Our mind may be blown. A person, a partner, an ally, someone else, a communication may blow our minds. An offer, an opportunity, something happens, faith-based, or a moment of courage, or leap. Courage, Mars in Gemini, is also, and again, every air sign has 3 decans. And one of these decans will be another air sign's energetic configuration. So Gemini has a lot of Aquarius in it as well. So a part of Gemini energy is co-ruled by Uranus. So not now, of course not right now, but we will get a good Uranian expression of Mars in Gemini in towards, I believe, the end of Mars retrograde in Gemini season. So perhaps into next year. But we will get an expression of that. And maybe that radical, big change of mindset, big change of thought, big change of relationships, big change of where you are mentally in your life, in the world, in your career, wherever, is gonna be domino affected now at around the time of this Virgo new moon. So let's see what happens, because this can be a time of profound change, and for some people big opportunities, but it is the opportunity which is so big that you might feel like you just can't do it, that it's not you, it's much bigger than you can handle. But regardless, you still have to do it, because this might be such an opportunity where you say, you know that this is something also divine. This is like a divine provocation. Do you have the guts? Do you have the courage? Maybe this is the kind of opportunity where the only downside might be a shameful or walk of shame backwards, where nah, this is way, I can't handle it, sorry guys, it's stupid. Nice try though. But if you have this attitude, and this is so very Gemini like, then you won already, then it's win-win. But if you really, if shame just is the reason why you decline, even if you don't have what it takes to do it, the opportunity itself, if there are no big risks attached, then you're unwise. As I say. And also, you know, the East. Jupiter in Aries is 8 degrees Sabian symbol. The East wind in mysticism, in occult, the East is the element of air, thought, new direction, new perspective. East is getting things done mentally, where the mind truly helps you. East is governed by Archangel Raphael, so partnerships. Raphael and Gemini are very, very good allies at their energy, spiritually speaking. The divine communicator, the divine messenger. And actually Mercury is in the sign of the divine diplomat, Libra, a Venusian sign. And speaking about Venus, the esoteric ruler of Gemini is none other than Venus. So not necessarily in astrology, in common astrology, so to speak, but esoterically speaking, alchemically speaking, spiritually speaking, these energies are good bedfellows. These are old mates, so to speak. Venus, Mercury, Gemini, Virgo, Leo, these neighboring energies, even if they're not always harmonious with each other, they have a method to their madness. So yes, this is where a domino effect will definitely take place in our lives. This, and for a lot of people, how will this manifest? This is almost signed there. Virgo, nature, plants, teas, Mother Nature, the purity of nature, the peace, tranquility, calm of nature, staying silently And what does Virgo suggest to me? The energy of Virgo, if I would like to translate it into something natural, a nature scene, an end of autumn, end of summer, beginning of autumn, where everything is ripe, where you know that even nature is getting ready for harvest, where there is a small lake or a very, very small stream, so you can also hear the water, and there is that deadly calm in the air, where you know that in a few hours there's gonna be a massive storm, but the serenity, tranquility of the moment of it, when things are ripe and fertile, when nature herself is preparing to give birth in excess, to feed, to invite to a feast and a period of great alchemy, when even nature herself cooks and ferments stuff, you know. She is the one who ferments. So if we have to blame someone for spirits, well, nature invented the stuff herself. So nature is already brewing. That means we are brewing. But before the brew, where we give true gratitude by serenely staying within the ripe fruit still on the branch. Maybe one falling on our heads if we sit, you know, beneath the tree. But that is the energy of Virgo, how truly it can heal us. And people suffering from depression, anxiety, any kind of mental illness, you would be surprised how this could help you. This simple cure and medicine of just allow your body to stay in the stillness of Virgo-like energy in nature expressed. And Virgo is also, as I said, the living earth, microbiology. A bit of dirt, a bit of, you know, ripe fruit, even some rotting next to you, that's part of the experience. Now, of course, on the world stage, economically, even food-wise, it's not gonna be a very harmonious time. Let me just put on the asteroids on Ceres at 15 degrees of Leo. Squares the North Node at 16 degrees of Taurus. Food. At some parts of the world there is very, very bad harvest, so there will be a crisis of grain or needing to tap into reserves, grain, Ceres, and anything that has to do with, you know, fruit and what the earth gives, basic minimal nourishment, so grain is one of them. So we might expect a little bit of crisis moment. You know, there might be a small moment of crisis. But also, Pallas Athena is sextiling Eris in the sign of Aries. How should I say? If your gut can prepare you to any kind of food disruptions, when you just know, let me buy this extra tin of, extra bottle of, extra can of, extra bag of, let me just make sure I have a bit more than I maybe urgently need right now in my freezer, not excess of course. Pallas Athena, that's how it acts with Eris. Or you coincidentally end up in the wrong aisle and something catches your eye. I would so much like this in the following weeks, months, and you just, even if you don't need it, you buy it. That's how Eris with Pallas Athena tactics prepares you for the winter and autumn. And Pallas Athena and Aries sextile, when ants and squirrels and Mother Nature, especially at the end of summer, prepares for the winter. So that's you, really. Let your instincts guide you. And what else would I like to mention here? Yes. So, Aries, because Pluto is retrograde and is already at 26 degrees of Capricorn, starts retaking the square, Eris and Pluto square. So this means protests, this means rebellious action, and maybe in the medical industry, maybe some news, some information circulating. So there might be blockages, disruptions, and also Mercury is preparing to, not Mercury will go retrograde, not that far in the future. So we need to be careful of acquisitions, purchases, what we invest in, partners, contracts, what we sign, because Mercury retrograde might change the landscape a lot. And dwarf planet Haumea also is part of the square, so yeah, we need to be careful here. So this concludes my analysis of this new moon in the sign of Virgo. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, bye for now.